All right, so today we're going deep on a case that's really going to stick with you guys. The story of Jodi Arias.
Oh yeah, this one's a tough one.
Yeah, we're talking about the murder of Travis Alexander, and we're breaking down some YouTube excerpts from JCS Criminal Psychology.
Great channel.
Yeah, their stuff is really good. And I gotta say, even if you think you know this story, like the back of your hand, the interrogation footage and trial highlights they use are just crazy.
Yeah.
Like they're really something else.
And what I think is so interesting about this case is that we're not just looking at, what happened,
Right.
but we're trying to understand the why. Like, what was actually going on in Jodi's head?
Yeah.
It's like solving a psychological puzzle, and we have to use her own words and actions as the clues.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so before we get into the really heavy stuff, let's set the scene a little bit. So Jodi and Travis, they had this like super intense, passionate relationship, but it kind of fell apart pretty quickly.
Yeah.
But the thing is, Jodi, she didn't really let go. She moved closer to Travis. She showed up at his place without warning.
Oh yeah, the classic.
Yeah.
Crazy ex behavior.
Exactly. And Travis's friends even warned him about her, but
This is where it gets really, really interesting, because despite all of that, Travis continued to have this like sexual relationship with Jodi. It's super complex, and it really lays the groundwork for everything that happens next.
yeah, and then comes the trigger, right?
Yeah.
Travis plans this trip to Cancun with another woman,
Mimi Hall.
Mimi Hall. Yeah, and it wasn't just like a random casual trip.
Right.
They were definitely into each other.
Yeah.
So you can imagine how Jodi must have felt seeing the man that she was obsessed with moving on,
Right, especially after.
especially after everything she did to try to get him back.
Yeah.
So this Cancun trip, it really could have been the ultimate rejection for Jodi.
Yeah, like a total narcissistic injury that just pushed her over the edge.
Yeah, totally. So just 6 days before Travis is supposed to leave for Cancun, Jodi goes to his house again.
Okay.
They have sex that's sold. Takes some pretty explicit pictures. It almost seems like things are okay between them. But then while Travis is in the shower, everything changes.
Yeah.
Jodi attacks him, stabbing him 27 times,
Yes.
slitting his throat and shooting him in the face.
I mean, the brutality of the crime scene, it can't be ignored.
No.
But what I think is so intriguing is that the attack, it was partially captured in this series of accidental photographs
Oh, wow.
that were taken with Travis's new camera.
Oh, really?
And in one of these photos, you can actually see Jodi's foot and a fatally wounded Travis,
Oh, my God.
which is just this chilling glimpse into the chaos of that attack.
Wow.
Yeah.
And after the murder, Jodi goes into this like super meticulous cleanup mode.
Yeah.
She wipes down Travis's body, throws his camera in the washing machine.
Right.
It's like she's trying to erase everything that happened.
Right.
And to make things even weirder, she leaves Travis a voicemail trying to create a fake alibi.
Yeah.
It's calculated. It's cold.
It's definitely a red flag.
Yeah, it is.
This behavior, this attempt to cover her tracks, it points to a level of premeditation that kind of goes against this idea of a woman just acting in a moment of like passion or rage.
Yeah.
This wasn't just a crime of passion. This was something that she thought about.
Right.
There was a conscious effort to deceive.
And that brings us to the interrogations. This is where things get really, really interesting. So Jodi agrees to meet with Detective Flores, who was investigating Travis's death.
Right.
But before the interrogation even starts, her behavior is so strange.
It's almost like she's trying to like control the narrative from the very beginning. So when the detective gets there, she pretends to be asleep. Then she fixates on the voice recorder, suggesting they use it even though it's outdated.
Well.
It's subtle manipulation.
Yeah.
Trying to seem cooperative while maybe trying to distract him or mislead him.
And then during that first interrogation, she is just all over the place, talking about her job, her finances, her religious beliefs.
Yeah.
Anything to avoid talking about Travis. It's so clear that she's evasive. But Detective Flores, he plays it cool. He just lets her talk and gently guides her with questions.
Right.
But he's subtly hinting that he knows more than she thinks.
Yeah. This is such a classic interrogation technique.
Yeah.
Letting the suspect talk, making them feel like they're in control.
Right.
While the detective just watching them, looking for those inconsistencies.
And those cracks in Jodi's story, they start to show. When Detective Flores reveals that he has those photos from Travis's camera,
Oh, yeah.
you can just see like the blood drain from her face.
Right.
But she denies being in the photos even though it's obviously her.
Right.
It's like she's desperately clinging to this image of innocence, even though the evidence is stacking up against her.
That moment, I think, is so crucial because it exposes the conflict in her story. She's trying to keep up this good girl, devout Christian image while doing these really deceitful things.
And then we get to the second interrogation. And Detectives Blaney and Flores, they switch up their tactics. They do this good cop, bad cop routine.
Right.
Where one detective is understanding and empathetic, and the other one is really harsh and confrontational.
Yeah.
And Detective Blaney, he really goes after Jodi. He questions her character, points out all the flaws in her story. It's intense.
Right.
And Jodi, she completely breaks down.
Yeah.
She's begging to talk to Detective Flores again, like the good cop.
Right.
But then just when you think she's about to confess, she does something totally unexpected.
Oh, what's that?
She asked to see photos of Travis after he was murdered.
Whoa. Okay, so that's not only unusual, but it's also like really psychologically significant.
Oh, gosh.
It could be morbid curiosity, this desire to see the consequences of her actions.
Right.
And this is where things get really interesting. Maybe she was looking for something specific in those photos, something that could help her come up with a new story.
Wait, so like she was trying to use the crime scene photos to...
Exactly. Think about it. If she's going to claim self-defense, her story has to line up with what they have.
Right.
So maybe she's looking for details in the photos that support her claims.
Oh, wow.
Or maybe she's trying to figure out what the police know. Either way, this sudden shift to a whole new story is classic manipulation.
So instead of denying that she was involved, she comes up with a totally new story.
Exactly. She claims that two unknown people broke into Travis's house and killed him while she was there.
Wow.
She even gives detailed descriptions of these attackers, their height, their voices.
Oh, my God.
It's a very elaborate lie, a desperate attempt to shift the blame and make herself the victim.
Okay. So we've got a brutal murder, a web of lies, a suspect who is clearly playing mind games. This is definitely a case that's going to stay with you.
Absolutely. And in the next part, we'll dive even deeper into the psychology of Jodi Arias.
Okay.
We'll explore how complex her personality is. We'll try to understand what drove her to do something so horrific.
I'm ready. So stay tuned, guys, because this deep dive is far from over.
It sure is.
So we left off with Jodi telling this crazy story about two masked intruders.
Yeah.
But here's where things get even crazier. The case actually goes to trial.
Oh, wow.
And the defense team, they decide to go all out. They're trying to make Jodi look like the victim of domestic abuse.
Right.
Saying that Travis was violent, had disturbing sexual preferences, and was even involved in pedophilia.
It's such a bold strategy.
Yeah.
And it's a complete 180 from how she was trying to protect his reputation before. If she really believed Travis was this monster, why wouldn't she say something sooner?
Yeah, why would she keep being intimate with him?
Exactly. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it's like pick a lane, Jodi. Either he was a great guy or he's a dangerous abuser.
Yeah.
You can't have it both ways.
And this inconsistency, it really gets to like the core of who Jodi Arias is.
Right.
We see this behavior throughout the whole case.
Yeah.
It's almost like she's putting on different masks depending on who she's with.
Yeah, and who she's trying to manipulate.
Yeah, exactly.
So she gets on the stand and tells the super detailed story about the killing,
Okay.
claiming self-defense. She talks about the accidental gunshot, how Travis threatened her life.
Right.
She even says she had memory loss after the attack.
Wow.
She's basically writing a movie script.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
the prosecution picks it apart piece by piece.
Right.
They point out all the inconsistencies and highlight that her timeline just doesn't match up with the evidence.
Yeah.
Like those photos we talked about.
Yeah.
The timestamps on the photos totally contradict what she's saying.
It's like those photos are silent witnesses.
They are. It's like she forgot that cameras don't lie. And it's fascinating because even when they show her this proof, Jodi still doesn't back down.
Wow.
She keeps saying she's innocent. She even says that Travis's family would agree with her
Oh, gosh.
if they knew the real him.
It's like she's trying to gaslight the entire courtroom.
Yeah, it is. It's mind-blowing how detached from reality she seems to be.
Yeah.
This could be a sign of what we call malingering, basically faking or exaggerating symptoms for personal gain, or it could point to something deeper.
Okay.
Like a factitious disorder where someone makes up an illness or injury for attention or sympathy.
So either she's like a master manipulator or she's delusional.
It's possible that both are true.
Yeah.
We see a mix of manipulation and self-deception a lot in these kinds of cases.
Okay.
Jodi could be intentionally manipulating everything
Right.
while also believing that she's innocent.
That's really scary, the thought that someone could twist reality like that.
It is, and it makes you think about how far people can go with self-deception.
Right? Like, how can someone tell these elaborate lies and then believe them? I mean, we all tell little white lies sometimes.
Sure.
But this is on a whole other level.
Yeah, this is different. It's like she's living in a parallel universe.
Yeah.
And in this universe, she's the victim, not the criminal.
Right.
And this victim mentality, we see it a lot with personality disorders.
Okay.
Specifically borderline personality disorder.
BPD.
Yeah, people with BPD, they often have rocky relationships, really intense emotions, and a distorted view of themselves.
You're saying Jodi might have BPD.
We can't diagnose anyone without, a real evaluation.
Of course. Yeah.
But some of her behaviors line up with the symptoms.
Okay, so like what?
Like the impulsivity, the unstable relationships, the black and white thinking.
Yeah, those are definitely red flags.
They are.
Okay. So let's go back to that weird request she made during the interrogation, asking to see those photos of Travis after the murder.
Yeah.
Do you think that was just part of her manipulation, or was there something more to it?
That's a great question. It could have been her trying to get info for her news story.
Right.
But it could also be a sign of something darker.
Like what?
Like a fascination with violence.
Oh, wow.
Or even this twisted attachment to Travis.
Like she couldn't let go.
Yeah, even in death. And that brings us back to the question of why.
Mm-hmm.
Why did Jodi kill Travis? Was it just in the heat of the moment? Was it planned out? Was it revenge?
Well, the prosecution said it's all about jealousy and control.
Right.
They said she was a scorned lover who couldn't deal with being rejected.
And there's definitely evidence to support that.
Yeah.
I mean, her obsessive behavior, the stalking, trying to mess with Travis and Mimi's relationship,
Right.
it all points to someone who wanted to control her ex.
But then there's the self-defense claims,
Right.
the abuse allegations. It's so confusing.
That's the thing with Jodi Arias. She's amazing at deception.
Yeah.
She creates this cloud of conflicting stories, and it's almost impossible to know the truth. But by looking at her behavior, her patterns, we can start to piece together a picture of who she is and what might have led her to commit this crime.
It's like doing a puzzle with some pieces missing.
Exactly.
You know something's not right, but you can't see the whole image.
And that's why this case is so captivating.
Yeah.
We're drawn to the mystery, the darkness, all the complexities of the human mind.
Right.
We want to understand what makes people like Jodi Arias do the things they do.
Yeah, it's a reminder that sometimes the scariest monsters aren't under the bed. They're the people we see every day.
Exactly. And those are the ones we need to be most careful of.
It's like we've been on this crazy journey
Yeah.
trying to figure out Jodi Arias.
Uh-huh.
But every time we think we're getting close, she throws us for a loop.
It's what keeps people so fascinated by this case, don't you think? We're drawn to the unknown. We want to understand the worst parts of human behavior.
Yeah.
Trying to understand her, it's almost like trying to understand the darkness in ourselves.
It is unsettling, but I think you're right. There's something about these true crime cases that forces us to face those hard truths about people.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder, could anyone be capable of this?
It's a question we all ask ourselves, especially after something like this. It makes us rethink the people in our lives, makes us question our own judgment.
Yeah. Can we ever really know anyone?
Right.
So after all this, after all the lies and manipulation, the courtroom drama, how do we make sense of it all?
Well, let's go back to the facts. The jury found Jodi guilty of first-degree murder.
Right.
And that verdict, it was based on mountains of evidence.
Yeah.
The crime scene, the inconsistencies in her stories, witnesses who saw her obsessive behavior.
But even with all of that, even after being convicted,
Yeah.
she still said she was innocent.
I know.
She even tried to blame Travis for his own death.
It's like she was living in a completely different world.
Totally.
And that brings us back to self-deception. Could she have actually believed that she was the victim?
No.
Or was it all an act to get away with it?
It's hard to imagine someone believing their own lies that much.
It is.
But then again, she's clearly good at manipulating people.
Yeah. The mind is a complex thing. We
Yeah.
can block things out, justify what we do.
Yeah.
Even when those things are terrible, it's how we survive.
Yeah.
But it can also be dangerous in the hands of someone like Jodi.
So what does this all mean for us? What can we take away from this whole thing?
I think the biggest thing is we need to recognize manipulation when we see it.
Yeah.
We need to think critically, question things, and not be afraid to point out when something doesn't add up.
And maybe be more careful about who we let into our lives.
Exactly. This case shows us that even the people closest to us can have dark secrets.
Well, that's a chilling thought to end on.
Yeah, it is.
But as always, I appreciate you breaking down this case with me.
Of course.
It's given me a lot to think about.
It's been my pleasure. And remember, the more we know about the dark side of people, the better we can protect ourselves. Yeah.
And the people we care about.
Exactly.
Well, that wraps up our deep dive into the Jodi Arias case. We hope you guys found it interesting, even if it was a little creepy.
Yeah.
We'd love to hear what you think.
Yeah.
Your theories, your questions about the case, share them with us on social media, and let's keep talking about it.
Absolutely.
Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and maybe sleep with one eye open.